Hi everybody, this is Todd Creager. What I do is I help couples heal from crises such as infidelity. I also help couples rekindle passion. I help individuals who have been in a pattern of negative relationships, toxic relationships, learn how to work on themselves to the point where they attract healthier people. And I also help individuals heal from trauma. Today I'm kind of combining trauma issues with intimacy issues. And the name of this is How EMDR Can Help Intimacy. I talked about EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing in a recent video. And I talked about a successful case where a person was able to heal her childhood wounds using this approach of eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which I will refer to as EMDR. It's like easier to say. But I want to say, since I'm a couples therapist, I'll tell you why I even began with EMDR. And even though I work with EMDR in many ways with people that aren't even in relationships, what first got me into it is I realized there's certain aspects of intimacy that require vulnerability and openness and the capacity to give and receive love, where childhood or even adult traumatic events have closed people off and lowered their capacity to give and receive love, lowered their capacity to be vulnerable. So that's why I got into it, and I'm so happy I did, because I have helped people develop the capacity to be more alive partners, more nurturing partners, and partners that could receive nurturing as well by doing this process. So I don't use this with all my couples, but more and more I do use it when I find that past trauma is one of the major obstacles. So past trauma, I just want to say that past trauma follows us in our current relationships. For example, let's say you're a person who had a lot of abandonment in your life. Maybe you had a dad who wasn't there or a mom who wasn't there. I've had clients where both parents really weren't there and they were raised by an uncle or a grandparent. But I had one lady just come into my practice just recently who says, my life was like being Cinderella. If you know the story of Cinderella, she didn't have a dad, her mom passed away, and she's with the stepmother, the wicked stepmother and the stepsisters, and she's there, she's basically cleaning the house, and she's a servant, but they don't ever give her the feeling that she's loved. This is a woman who I'm going to be doing EMDR with. I just saw her for the first time this past week. And so this is the kind of thing where she's limited in how intimate she could be because she's expecting abandonment. She closes off. She gets into unhealthy relationship patterns because she doesn't have the sense of self-worth that she will have while we go through this process, as we go through this process. So what happened to her leaves her expecting it. Same with abuse, same with neglect. When people are abused, it limits their capacity to be open to receiving and to giving love with healthy people. We tend to recreate similar patterns. And so it goes on until we process that earlier trauma. And that's what EMDR does. And once we process that earlier trauma, then that person is freed to be more and more who he or she is, who this person really was born to be. Trauma takes away access, I should say, to who we are. And EMDR helps you activate these other parts of you that can be self-compassionate and self-loving and to choose people better even. Even being in a very critical home, EMDR can help. If there was a lot of criticism and a sense of no matter what I do is not enough, there's many ways people can get traumatized. And so, like I said, it diminishes our capacity to give and receive love. And so what we want is to be freed up to be free, to continue to increase our capacity. Our capacity to give and receive love can constantly increase when we're freed up from these past traumas. Now, I have worked with people that have infidelity issues, and again, I've said before, it's not a good thing, it's an awful thing, it's not fair to the person who's betrayed, but oftentimes infidelity is an acting out of an earlier trauma. And the best way to regain trust in a relationship is when that person who betrayed, that can process traumas that led to that acting out. I'm not saying it's always because of trauma, but I'm saying it often is, more than we think. It's oftentimes a symptom of untreated childhood or adult trauma. As there's other ways people act out, like drugs, alcohol. When people are in relationships where they're using drugs, alcohol, substances, it also diminishes their ability to be emotionally present for the other person. And oftentimes they're using these substances because they had trauma, they didn't have good coping to deal with this trauma, so they use the drugs, alcohol, to regulate themselves, which takes away from their capacity to be a very emotionally present partner. Also, when people process their trauma, listening improves. They're able to listen because, let's say you're coming from a family where there's a lot of criticism. Do you think you're going to be a good listener when your partner has anything negative to say about you? Absolutely not. Partner complains about you, your childhood wound comes up, and that little boy or little girl is the one that's present, not the adult that's capable of listening. So the EMDR helps process that so you're in a position to be a much better listener. Sexually, intimacy-wise as well, emotional intimacy and sexual physical intimacy can free up. You can reach that capacity. I call it your relationship potential when you're able to process your past trauma. And there are not too many, but a variety of ways people do this. I chose EMDR because I see it's effective. I want you to know it's out there and know that if you're not happy with some aspect of your intimacy, you may want to look at this as a potential approach to help you out. And I will be happy to be that person to treat you. When it comes to therapy and coaching, I work virtually, but when it comes to EMDR, you need someone to be present with you. And so if you're not geographically close to me, I will find an EMDR therapist for you in your area. They are probably there. So that's what I have to say about that. Just know that you have tools. There are tools out there, and oftentimes being aware of them is the first step to acting on your own behalf. I want you to also click on the link below. That's an article that I wrote called 5 Steps to Healing from Trauma. I think it's very, very helpful. It's really, I really highly recommend you looking at that. So I wish you well. I wish you freedom from trauma. I wish you the ability to be all that you are and to have all the intimacy that you want and deserve. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.